Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I do appreciate you being with me. Look, we got a long way to go this morning. Here's what I'm doing. I'm showing you that Isaiah chapter 60 foretold the time of the light of the Lord shining amidst the darkness, bringing salvation not only to the whole house of Israel, but to the Gentiles, those not of the tribes. The Olivet of Isaiah chapter 60 and verse 10. That the time of the creation of a brand new priesthood, the time of the restoration of Zion, which is the time of the remarriage. Okay? Hang on to that. The time of the restoration of Zion is the remarriage, but it's not the remarriage of just the 10 tribes, and it's not just the remarriage of the 2 southern tribes. It is the restoration and the remarriage of all 12 tribes. That's why it's so significant that he spends time speaking about the restoration of Zion, and then includes, in addition to that, and as a result of that, the salvation of those not of the tribes. This is critical. But then he predicts the coming, or he describes this new Zion, this new Jerusalem. And I pointed out to you that John in the book of Revelation, Revelation 21 specifically, quotes from, echoes directly Isaiah chapter 60 in describing the new Jerusalem, which is the bride. Revelation 21, 1 and 2. I'm telling you, folks, this is absolutely beautiful stuff. And then I shared with you from Isaiah 60 and verse 22, after predicting all of these marvelous, messianic, soteriological kingdom prophecies, the Lord says, I, the Lord, will hasten it. That's the fulfillment of all of these marvelous tenets. I will hasten it in its time. And I pointed out to you that the Septuagint uses the Greek word Kairos. Kairos is designated divinely appointed time. Now, I want to spend most of my time in Revelation, but I want to go first of all to 1 Peter. And like I said, I've got my Englishman's Greek Concordance in front of me, which gives 82 occurrences of the Greek word kairos in the New Testament. And I am skipping over tons of them, all right? But I want you to notice in 1 Peter chapter 1 that Peter said Christ was revealed in the last time. Okay, Christ was revealed in the last appointed time. Now remember, Daniel 9 set the time for the manifestation of Messiah within the 70 weeks. Okay? In 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 17, Peter said, the time. The definite article is in the Greek. Pardon me. The Kairos. The time has come, Peter said, for the judgment. Definite article before the judgment. Before judgment. So here is Peter writing in the 60s saying the divinely appointed time for the judgment. By the way, the only judgment in the context, which is demanded, by the way, by the use of the anaphoric article in verse 17, is the judgment of verse 5, which is the judgment of the living and the dead, i.e., the resurrection. So here is Peter in 1 Peter chapter 4, 17, stating emphatically the divinely appointed time for the judgment of the living and the dead, i.e., the resurrection, had come 2,000 years ago. Folks, could language be any clearer? Let's go to the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, Revelation 1 and verse 3, and of course John was told these things must shortly come to pass. Not some of these things, not a few of these things, not even a majority of these things. The things in this book must shortly come to pass, and then Verse 3, for, that's a causative particle, for the time, the Kairos, has drawn near. Isaiah 60 foretold the events of Revelation. The Lord said, when that time came, I'm going to hasten its fulfillment. John said, the divinely appointed time had arrived. It was at hand. Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, in the sounding of the seventh trumpet, which would sound at the time of the destruction of the city, quote, where the Lord was crucified, Revelation 11, verse 8, it says that in the sounding of that seventh trumpet, at the time of that destruction and that judgment, the time of the dead and the rewarding of the prophets had come. How much clearer could that be? Then we go to Revelation 12, verse 19. Satan, who had sought to kill the son born of the woman. There was war in heaven, and Satan was cast out, and he came down to earth, having great wrath, because he knew he had only a short time. Revelation 12 and 14. The church, the woman who fled from Satan, went into the wilderness, and there, for a time, a times, and a half time, Kairos, she was nourished and protected. And then finally in Revelation 22 and 10, John is told again, after seeing all of these visions of all of these things, both horrific and wonderful, these things must shortly come to pass. The time, the divinely appointed time, is at hand, has drawn near. Now, what John saw was what? He saw the wedding. He saw the wedding of the new Jerusalem promised by Isaiah 60. And he was told that the coming of that new Jerusalem at the time of the wedding, which is the wedding of Matthew 25, John was told, these things must shortly come to pass. The divinely appointed time had arrived. Now, folks, what this means is, once again, as I shared with you earlier in the week, the wedding of Revelation chapter 21 would occur at the time of the destruction of Babylon, the adulterous harlot wife, which was none other than Old Covenant Jerusalem. And by the way, folks, did you know that Kenneth Gentry agrees with that? Kenneth Gentry, in his book, Navigating the Book of Revelation, says that the new creation of Revelation 21, 1 and following, despite initial appearances, does not describe the consummate situation. Rather, it deals with the wedding of the Lord in AD 70 with the divorcing and the death of Old Covenant Judah. That's Kenneth Gentry's view. And yet somehow, some way, Kenneth Gentry goes to Matthew chapter 25 and he divides the discourse, and he says that Matthew 25, 1 to 13 is about the so-called end of time. Well, that means that the coming of the Lord for the wedding of Matthew 25, 1 to 13 must be a different coming of the Lord for a different wedding. Who knows, a different bride perhaps? From that of Revelation 19 through 21. Folks, that's just simply untenable. That's an indefensible position. That is a position that is wrong. Listen, thanks so much for joining me for this morning's Morning Muses. Don't forget the fantastic December 2020 three-book special. Basically, you're buying We Shall Meet Him in the Air, the Wedding of the King of Kings, where Jesus' apostles confused. And if you purchased all three of them separately, it cost you over $60. But for December 2020, U.S. orders only, you buy We Shall Meet Him in the Air, were Jesus' apostles confused? And I'm giving you this book. Not only that, I'm paying shipping. Total delivered price, again, U.S. orders only, $40. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com. There's a banner up at the top. Click on the banner. Order the books. You'll be absolutely thrilled that you did. And you will see that all attempts to divide the Olivet Discourse, and you will see that the time of the wedding of Matthew 25, 1 to 13, truly was in AD 70. Now, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to have video number 2 in my response to Kenneth Gentry's 4 articles in which he attacks really, really powerfully, not powerfully, he just attacks my book, Watching for the Parousia, were Jesus' apostles confused. You're going to see in my responses, the apostles weren't nearly as confused as Mr. Gentry is. I'll see you on the flip side.